Cohorting. All the cool kids are doing it. Well, at least some of the cool kids. Chris Vanderveen worked with the artist the Tegna Design Tank to explain.
cohort. Look that up in the dictionary and you might find this: an ancient Roman military unit. We're not going to talk about that type of cohort. No, let's talk about another definition, because chances are schools are going to be talking a lot more about cohorts thanks to COVID. Yet remember that? School leaders consider the best way to get kids back inside schools. They'll likely consider cohorting, a common term in sociology and education that's about to get its debut on a more national stage. Think of it like this. Many moons ago, I was a member of Denver's Thomas Jefferson High School class of 1992. Yeah, I know, I ain't no spring chicken. Technically, my 200 or so member class of 92 was a cohort, a group. Schools have all sorts of cohorts who tend not to intermingle with other cohorts, which in a building trying to limit the spread of an infectious disease could prove valuable. Look at it this way. Smith Elementary has 1,000 students all in the same building, all who intermingle. Now let's say little Johnny gets sick. Johnny infects Timmy, who infects Billy and Sally, who infect Frankie, Julie, and Katie. This school will need to close, at least temporarily, and keep all 1,000 students, sick or not, out. Which is why schools will attempt to cohort. Let's say Johnny gets sick, but this time Johnny's in a 50-person group that doesn't interact with the other 950. So maybe Timmy, who's in Johnny's cohort, gets sick, but Billy and Sally and Frankie and Julie and Katie have no interaction with that cohort and thus never get sick. You'd still have to have Johnny's cohort stay home and wait for the risk to pass, but the other 950 still could go to school safely. The smaller the cohort, the smaller the number of students at risk when someone turns up sick. And now you know M-O-R-E about C-O-H-O-R-T. Nope, not that definition, the other one. Thanks, guys. You can go home now.
Just